So this news came out recently that Clemson and Notre Dame have scheduled a 12-game series starting in 2027, going through 2038. Now, I am not going to spin this into a realignment take. I did ponder it. I thought about it. I really did. I wasn't able to make an angle of it for two reasons. Number one, these sorts of scheduling arrangements can always be cut off or cut short. And, well, we had more home games or you had more home games. And there can be a payment arranged if a team ever wants to go back on a deal like this. And reason number two is Notre Dame just continues to just be Notre Dame. They're just the Irish. There's nothing to them. They're just, we're good. We're good. We're fine. No, don't need it. So we'll see when the early 2030s roll around if their minds change. But this is great for college football. Absolutely great for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm always here for high-profile non-conference matchups that I know we're getting every season. It does speak to the ridiculousness at some level of college football scheduling, which I have railed against for a long time. I have been against the way college football does scheduling, kind of like this. Now, it doesn't start for a couple of years. The spirit of it, though, is what I want to sing the praises of. So both of these schools don't struggle to find quality non-conference opponents. Clemson opens this year with LSU. They close the way they always do in rivalry week with South Carolina. So their ability to go out and fight, they played Georgia to start last season. They have played a lot of high-profile non-conference matchups, and I think this is great. I think it's awesome because these are the sorts of games in the first few weeks of the season that fans want to see. These are the sorts of games that television networks really want to see. And so when you're able to set a matchup like Notre Dame playing Miami as they do in week 1 of this year, it's one of the biggest non-conference games in the entire country going into next season. I mean, I might start talking about that game again in June in depth. The stakes are simply massive. And you are going to look at these programs, and when they square off in a 12-year window, maybe they play all 12, maybe they don't, there's going to be a top 10 matchup, I feel like, more often than not. Now, it's hard. It's definitely hard to project that far into the future where everybody's going to be. But these two programs for the last 10 years have been two of the winningest in all of college football. So for them to get together and say, hey, let's put each other on the schedule every year. Yeah, sure, there are a bunch of other tough games. Yeah, Notre Dame plays USC every single year. And Notre Dame will keep playing teams like Florida State regularly out of the ACC. And they always play 5 ACC games. And this, I don't believe, is counting towards that threshold of 5 games that they play every year as a part of their scheduling affiliation with the ACC, where they're a member full-time in other sports, but they're an independent in football, which is something we could do in the sport, like Chip Kelly suggested, but that's a long ways out. So it doesn't count towards that. But the idea that these two schools, without anyone telling them, got together and said, let's just do a long-term home and home and give each other a quality non-conference game every year. I want more of that. And the reason you don't have as much of this as you could in college football is because schools set their own schedules. Now, I do think it's an advantage, though I was against and remain against college football playoff expansion. I do think this is one of the positive externalities that come from that decision, because if you have more wiggle room, schools, I think, are going to be, when they make their non-conference schedules, more willing to go out and schedule big-time games, matchups that we want to see, matchups that they have a greater likelihood of losing, but could benefit from tremendously if they're able to win. You think about a game this year, for example, Syracuse plays Tennessee in week 1, and the Vols are about a 12.5-point favorite, according to our friends at FanDuel, and understandably so. So why would Syracuse play that game? Number one, it's a high-profile matchup, and number two, if they win, they benefit from it being a high-profile matchup. You don't just have the benefits of being on television playing against Tennessee, showcasing your stuff, and all of that good jazz. Certainly you do get all that if you're Syracuse, but if you win a game like that, well, suddenly people will look at your program very differently. In the older college football playoff landscape, you didn't have these sorts. I never got the sense this willingness was quite as strong. I think of instances like Michigan, for example, just one of many. I'm not picking on Michigan here. There are others I go to. Michigan canceled a home and home with UCLA when Chip Kelly was there, and they were a good team. Why? Because Michigan knew they didn't have a huge margin for error. And so they went out and scheduled like Bowling Green or Middle Tennessee, Tech State, like whoever, because it was all about the record. And it still is to an extent. We know the College Football Playoff Committee likes those records a whole heck of a lot. They want them to be clean. They want them to have no losses, or, it depends. Like there's all sorts of subjectivity in there. But as Eric and I mentioned earlier on the show, that's part of what makes college football great. I think that when you expand the playoff, it's at 12 teams. By the time this series starts playing, I imagine it will be at least 14. At least you'll have exciting atmospheres. At least this is not being played at a neutral site, and at least these teams are actually playing. And, the stability this provides for both of these football programs in the long run, I don't think I think it can go overlooked. It shouldn't go overlooked when talking about matchups like this, because now you don't have to go out and wonder, is our schedule going to be strong enough? Notre Dame doesn't really have to wonder that each year, but Clemson in particular, when they're going to have South Carolina, that's a good program, on their schedule every year, and they're going to have Notre Dame, well, now you can schedule multiple FCS or group. Well, you can only schedule one FCS and have it count towards your bowl eligibility record, but you can schedule two games that you are going to win. You go schedule East Carolina for all anybody cares, and get some random FCS back in, bring in the Citadel early in the year. Now, I still want the ACC and SEC to get rid of the late season cupcakes, because it's ridiculous that they can play. Clemson regularly plays the Citadel, for instance, late in the year, while everybody else is playing conference games. I think that's ridiculous, and it needs to go away. However, when you have a matchup like this on the schedule, I don't care what the rest of your non-conference slate looks like. My ideal scheduling world, if I were given the power to dictate this in college football, every single Power 4 school would have one FCS game on the schedule, one Group of 5 game on the schedule, and one Power 4. Those would be your 3 non-conference games. Everybody would play 9 league games. Well, this puts Clemson really close to that, if not going above and beyond. And Notre Dame typically goes somewhat above and beyond. Their schedule is usually good enough. It was this past year to make the playoff without a conference championship, of course. I don't think this moves Notre Dame anywhere closer to moving themselves into a conference. But for Clemson every year, starting in 2027, to know they're going to have Notre Dame and South Carolina, that's fantastic. I think that's fantastic. I want more of this in college football. This is great for the sport. I have railed against scheduling for a long time, and I can still think this is ridiculous that, we know it's going to be a series that's played until 2038, but I think it benefits both sides. I do think the expansion of the playoff increased their willingness to go out and make a decision like this, and I hope we wind up getting more of it as college football rolls on in the expanded playoff era. I really do. I love it. I love these sorts of games. I would rather watch Miami go, and host Notre Dame than Miami play Miami of Florida. Miami of Ohio. It's a lot more fun.